As I opened my eyes, my brain was still recalling the bloody novel I had been chasing after staying up late yesterday. The next second, I found myself lying on an oversized European-style carved bed. The windows were made of gold, and the air in the room was filled with a sense of pride. I sat up suddenly, and the sound of my brain buzzing around me exploded. This is not my home. Where does my old small rented apartment have this condition? When I looked down, I was wearing a silk pajamas and a string of blind jadeite on my wrist. I pinched myself, gasping in pain, and suddenly a pile of memories that didn't belong to me suddenly burst into my brain. Lin Xiaoxiao, a young lady from the rich Lin family, has a father who doesn't love her mother and is not fond of her. She has been treated as a marriage tool since she was a child. She has a clever and willful personality and is a typical vicious female supporting role. Her final appearance was that she was stepped on by the original heroine Su Wan'er, and her family was destroyed and she was unable to suffer anymore. I was stunned. Were I wearing a book? Or dressed as such an unlucky and vicious female supporting role? I jumped out of bed, rushed to the lens, and saw a face that was too long to be broken, with big eyebrows and big eyes, and my skin was as white as reflective. It was the snake beauties described in the book. I took a deep breath and tried to calm down, and my brain began to fly and recall the plot quickly. According to the settings in the book, today is the day when the Lin family announced that I would marry a man I had no idea about. Mr. Lin, who is my body, will announce the marriage at the family dinner, and my unlucky female supporting role can only cry and accept it, and then step by step towards a tragic end. No. I am not the original owner's brain that was in the water. After all, I am a book wearer who is familiar with the plot. How can I be regarded as a pawn? Marriage? No door. I gritted my teeth and decided to do the big vote. I must fight for this marriage today. The dinner time arrived soon. The Lin family's garden lights were bright, and they were either rich or expensive. Men and women in gift clothes were holding incense cups, smiling dully and tidy. I walked into the banquet hall wearing a long red dress, high heels, and hard-skinned. As soon as I stepped in, all my eyes were focused on me. I could feel the look, mocking, and a bit optimistic. After all, Lin Xiaoxiao's name was in the Haoman circle and had long been tied with unreasonable deeds. Lo, come. A low and majestic voice came from the main position. I looked up and saw that Mr. Lin was sitting in the center, wearing a dark tang suit, and his face was as cold as a stone. There was also a man standing beside him, at his 30, with a straight face, and he was pretty good, but there was a calculating light in his eyes. This is the man in the book who married me, Zhang Xiang, the eldest son of the Zhang family. In the original book, after Lin Xiao married him, he was cheated by his and Su Wan'er to destroy his family. I sneered, and I had made up my mind. Yuan. I walked over, my voice neither humble nor arrogant, and a smile appeared on my face. Old Lin looked at me, with a few dissatisfaction in his eyes, which seemed to be unsatisfied with my eye-catching red skirt. Tonight is an important day, don't give me a face. He said coldly, then turned to Zhang Xiang, his temperament calmly. Xiang is the eldest son of the Zhang family. He can't find any wrong with his family background and character. I have already decided on your marriage. The whole scene calmed down, and everyone was waiting to see how I answered this good card. I lowered my head, smiled shyly and pretending to be cool, then raised my head, and looked straight at old man Lin. I have something to say. My voice was not loud, but it was enough for everyone present to hear it. Mr. Lin sniffed his eyebrows, and obviously he didn't expect me to open his mouth. Say. He was impatient and knocked his fingers on the armrest of the chair. I took a deep breath and picked up the wedding book I had prepared long ago from the table next to me. This thing was delivered by the housekeeper in the afternoon, and I hid it in my pocket in my skirt at that time. I took everyone's face and lifted the thin few pages, pulling a sneer on the corner of my mouth. I don't accept this marriage. My voice fell and the whole scene was silent. Lin Laozi's face suddenly sank, and Zhang Xiang's eyes also became cold. Lin Xiaoxiao, what are you rude? Old Lin shouted angrily, the sound was filled with pressure. I felt a little nervous, but I continued to say it with my head on. Hushang. Yui, I just don't want to hand over my second half to someone I don't like. I smiled, my language as if I were chatting about home, but the movements in my hands didn't stop at all. I yelled and directly tore the wedding book from the middle, then tore it into several pieces. With a glance, the white paper fell to the ground like snowflakes. The whole scene was dead silent. Everyone's eyes widened, looking at me as if they had seen a ghost. Lin Xiaoxiao's face was so dark that it could drip out of ink. Zhang Xiang's fist was clenched and his eyes were filled with humiliation and anger. Lin Xiaoxiao, do you know what you are doing? Old Lin gritted his teeth, his voice as low as if he was pulled out of a tooth. Of course I know. I heard my shoulders, laughing freely, and suddenly, I just think that my marriage should be decided by myself. You, right? As soon as this happened, the atmosphere in the whole scene became even more explosive. Some people talked about it, some laughed, and even a few young people came to me with surprise and appreciation. I know that my skills have completely broken the rules in the Haomen circle. Rareless. Lin Xiaoxia slapped the table suddenly and stood up. Do you think you have the qualifications to decide? The daughter of the Lin family, marriage is not something you can tell. Then start with me and change this breaking rules. I went back without regressing, my heart beat as fast as a drumbeat, but I was still smiling on my face. Yeah, I respect you as a long-lasting person, but I will fight for my happiness myself. After saying this, I could feel the smell of the fire medicine in the air getting more intense. Lin Xiaoxia was so angry that his lips were shaking, but he didn't have time to get angry anymore. A cold voice came from the corner. Interesting. This sound is low and magnetic, carrying a sensation of self-importance. I looked at it in the sound and saw a man leaning against the pillar, holding a glass of red wine in his hand, his eyes cold and deep, as if he could see through it. Gu Hanting. The cold male protagonist in the book, the master of the court, is also the dream lover whom all wealthy daughters are thinking about. He was so straightforward that he didn't look like a word, his facial features seemed to be carefully crafted, and his aura was so strong that people dared not look directly at it. My heart thumped, and I didn't expect him to open his mouth suddenly. Gu Hanting in the book is a master who doesn't like to care about idle things. How could he be interested in my drama? I felt the remark in my heart, raised my eyebrows at him, and smiled even more sharply. I always think it's interesting. Why don't you give me some advice? I deliberately flirted with it, and I was actually a little bit stupid in my heart, but I couldn't let it go. Gu Hanting raised his eyebrows and a smile that was almost invisible came out of the corner of his mouth. What do you think? Miss Lin's sarcasm is much more important than in the news. It sounds like an excuse, but the eyes clearly show some exploration and disdain. I hummed in my heart, okay, the cold male protagonist is indeed not easy to flirt with, but at least he noticed me, this is the first step. At this moment, a crisp and weak sound suddenly entered. Xiaoxiao sister, why are you doing this? It's also for your own good. Isn't it difficult for the Lin family and the Zhang family to fight for the wedding like this? I turned my head and saw Su Wan's face wearing a long white dress and a gentle smile, like a little fairy who is not stained with dust, but there was a hint of calculation in her eyes. The heroine of the original book is indeed here. I sneered. Su Wan's green tea tastes so delicious. On the surface, it's just that I want to let me get out of the market. I glanced at her, full of mockery. Miss Su said this lightly. If you were forced to marry someone you didn't like, would you be willing to do it? Su Wan's face stiffened, and she didn't expect that I would go back directly. She bit her lip and put on a grievance, I just don't want to see you and you being unhappy. Then stop worrying. I rolled my eyes and made her speechless. Su Wan's face was blue and white, and she obviously didn't expect that I would be so disrespectful. At this time, old Lin finally couldn't help it. He snorted coldly and said in a deep voice, Lin Xiaoxiao, you will make a play today, and give me some thoughts on the consequences. Come on, take her back. The two protective lenses immediately walked over and prepared to hold me. My heart sank, knowing that this scene is almost the same as here. I didn't want to be really shut up, so I took the initiative to take a step back and said with a smile, "Don't bother them, I'll go by myself." After saying that, I turned around and walked out. My steps were extremely unwanton. As I passed by Gu Hanting, I deliberately slowed down and blinked at him. There will be a period of time later. He didn't say anything, but just narrowed his eyes, as if he had looked at me a little more. I laughed in my heart. Okay, this wave of operation today is totally free. Just as I walked out of the banquet hall, I heard the low voice from Su Wan'er coming from behind. Xiaoxiao's sister's temperament is really getting more and more out of the country. The words made me feel goosebumps. I stopped, turned my head and looked at her, and sneered out of the corner of my mouth. "Su Wan'er, let's calculate our accounts slowly." I walked out of the banquet hall, and when the night breeze blew, my brain suddenly became much more awake. Although that one was too dead, I also know that this was just ahead. Mr. Lin will not let me go easily. Zhang Xiang must have hated me so much that he hated me, let alone Su Wan's white flower, which is weak in his mouth, but I guess I have already thought of 100 ways to curse me. But, what are you afraid of? Since I have entered this book, I don't plan to be the slaughtered forest. I have to take the initiative to attack and first remove Su Wan's disguise, so that she can know who is the protagonist of this game. Just as he was thinking, the housekeeper Chen quickly followed him. His face was not very good looking, and he said in a low voice, "Miss, I'll let you go back to your room and stay no matter where you are." I raised my eyebrows and smiled a little unreasonably. "Okay, go back when you go back, I'm tired anyway." Old Chen was stunned for a moment, probably not expecting that I would agree so happily. He glanced at me with a silence, but he didn't say anything, and silently took me back to the room. As soon as I entered the room, I kicked off my high heels, sat on the bed with my legs, and started to calculate the next plan in my brain. Su Wan'er seems to be harmless on the surface, but she does not use her weakness to cheat people, especially the original owner Lin Xiaoxiao. What she is best at is dressing together in public places to gain sympathy, and then secretly give birth to others. Since that's the case, I have to find an opportunity to expose her true face. Just as I was thinking, a shattered sound suddenly came from outside the window, as if someone had passed by. I felt tight in my heart, walked to the window with my hands, and opened the window and saw that it was Su Wan'er. She was wearing that long white dress and stood in the pavilion far away, holding her cell phone in her hand, as if she was talking to someone. Although I couldn't hear what she said, when I saw the smug smile on her face, my heart seemed to be like a mirror. This woman must have nothing to do with. I squinted my eyes, took out my phone, adjusted it to the recording mode, and quietly pushed the window to capture her voice as much as possible. Although it is a bit far away, you can still hear several keywords, such as feast, showroom, plan, and so on. I sneered, "Okay, Su Wan'er, she's doing some tricks behind her back." Although this recording is not clear, it can at least prove that she is calculating me. This thing is not enough. I have to find an opportunity to find her foxtail to find everyone. As soon as my brain turned, I suddenly thought of a wonderful point. The Lin family will have a bigger charity banquet next week, and all the big names in the circle will come, so Su Wan'er will definitely not give up this opportunity to show her presence. As long as I do something at the banquet, I keep it and let her be revealed. In the next few days, I was actually staying in the room, appearing to be like a confined good lady, but actually had already made the plan clear. Su Wan'er was indeed not in my opinion. She has not come to me to care me in front of me these days. She said it very well, "Don't be angry with my sister, and I will plead for you," but that look clearly wanted to see me laugh. Every time I smiled and sneered in my heart, "Su Wan'er, don't worry, I've been crying for a few days." Finally arrived at the charity banquet. The Lin family's garden was warm again, and the parking lot was full of luxury cars. The guests were wearing various high-end custom-made clothes and greetings with smiles. I chose a low-key black dress, with a simple and neat hair plait, and I didn't show off my makeup. I didn't look as arrogant as usual, but the atmosphere was definitely not weak. When entering the venue, Lin Xiaoxiao's face was still cold, and it seemed that it was not calm yet. Zhang Xiang was also on the scene. When he saw me, his eyes were as heavy as water could drip out of it, but I didn't pay attention to him. He just found a corner and sat down, and quietly observed the whole scene. Su Wan'er was indeed still in that white dress, and her weak and impeccable appearance instantly attracted a lot of people's attention. She held the cup of fragrant rice and greeted people everywhere. Her mouth was as sweet as if she had been smearing honey. She glanced at me from time to time, as if she wanted to see what I was reacting. I lowered my head and pretended to be playing with my phone, and a smile appeared at the corner of my mouth. Come on, the fish is on the hook. Halfway through the banquet, the host announced the highlight of tonight, the charity auction. Various famous jewelry, antiques and paintings were displayed one by one, and the guests were playing the plaques and filmed, and the scene was very popular. Su Wan'er didn't care, so she deliberately took a photo of an expensive link. Then, in the shocked eyes of the crowd, she smiled and said, "This link is so beautiful. I want to give it to Xiaoxiao's sister as a gift for reconciliation." The whole scene's eyes instantly focused on me. Some people made small comments and some people showed their optimistic expressions. I stood up, smiled so hard that I took the chain box from service. When the crowd opened it, they said lightly, "Miss Su is so kind, but I don't like this chain." Su Wan's face froze, and she obviously didn't expect that I would give her face. She bit her lip and smiled with a hint of gratitude. "So sister doesn't like it? That's really my choice. It's not that you didn't choose well, it's that this thing doesn't match my horoscope." I smiled and put the box on, handed it back to the service life, then looked at her and said word by word, "After all, I'm the most sarcastic thing." As soon as this happened, the whole scene was calm for a moment, and a low private word broke out immediately. Su Wan's face turned pale in an instant, and there was a panic in her eyes, but she still looked calm and said with a trembling voice, "Xiaoxiao sister, what do you mean? What does it mean? Miss Su knows more than anyone else in my heart." I sneered, took out my phone from my bag, clicked the audio recorded that day, and raised the volume and played it out. Although the sound is a bit vague, the words fighting, framework, and feasting can still be heard clearly. The whole scene was silent. Su Wan's face changed a lot, and she hurriedly explained, This is not me. I don't know what this is. Sister Xiao, have you misunderstood? Is it wrong?" I raised my eyebrows, my language filled with mockery. "Can I hear Miss Su's voice wrong? This record was recorded in the pavilion that night. You didn't say anything less about my bad words at that time, and you planned to give me a gift at the banquet, right?" As soon as I said this, the eyes of Ban Ke changed. No matter how well Su Wan dresses in the circle, she can't stand this kind of facial blowjob now. She was so anxious that her eyes were red, and she said with a choking voice, "Xiaoxiao sister, I really didn't. Why did you wrong me like this? Unfortunate. It's better for everyone to listen. Is this sound yours?" I didn't give her a chance to breathe, so I directly sent my phone to a slightly older expensive woman next to me, and said with a smile, "Auntie Wang, you have good ears, so I can listen to it." The woman took the phone and listened for a few seconds before her face darkened. She glanced at Su Wan and said lightly, "The sound is indeed very similar to Miss Su." As soon as this happened, Su Wan's collapsed. She bit her lip and her eyes fell down, looking so frustrating, but no one came forward to speak to her this time. After all, what people in the Haoman circle look down on the most is the behavior of doing minor actions behind the scenes. Su Wan's operation is like putting himself on the fire. I felt so happy when I looked at her like that, but I still had a regretful expression on my face and said in a slight voice, "Miss Su, I have such good acting skills, why don't I be an actor? But if I want to cheat people next time, remember to hide my voice well and don't let anyone catch the handle." This sentence is like a knife, and it stabs directly into Su Wan's heart. She was so angry that she was trembling that she couldn't even express a word. She could only lower her head and wipe her eyes, and she was so embarrassed. The private words on the whole scene are getting bigger and bigger. Some people start to laugh at each other in a low voice, and some even snort coldly. Su Wan's face is completely lost this time. I smiled in my heart, but I didn't show it on my face, so I turned around and prepared to return to my seat. At this moment, a low voice suddenly came from a distance. Miss Lin's method is quite awesome. I was stunned and turned my head to see that Gu Hanting was standing nowhere, holding a glass of red wine in his hand, his eyes as deep as if he could suck people in. The corners of his mouth slightly slighted, as if he was smiling, but there was a bit of exploration in the smile, making it impossible for people to guess what he was thinking. My heart thumped, and I didn't expect him to take the initiative to open his mouth. Gu Hanting is famous for being aloof in his books. It is hard to make him say one more sentence. Is this reaction a little more interesting to me now? I felt a little excitement in my heart, smiled and met his gaze, and said lightly, I have always won the prize. I'm just protecting myself. Who would have asked some people to come and call me? He raised his eyebrows and did not answer, but just picked up the wine glass and took a sip. His eyes finally fell on me, as if he wanted to see me through. I was a little uncomfortable being stared at by him, but I still stood up straight with my head stiff, smiling at the corner of my mouth, not showing any weakness. Miss Lin, he finally opened his mouth, his voice as low as he could be heard. You played this game today, and you did a good job. But next time you play this game, don't let yourself get stuck. This sounds like a reminder, but there is an inexplicable meaning in the language. I was stunned for a moment, and just wanted to talk back, but he had turned away, his back was cold and distant, as if he didn't take the just conversation seriously at all. I stared at his back, feeling a little unhappy. What do you mean not to trap yourself in? The man's mouth was still so poisonous, but his eyes were indeed a little different than before. I bit my lip and thought this matter was meaningful. At this time, a low sob suddenly came from behind me. I turned my head and saw that Su Wan was still standing there, her eyes flowing unstoppable, and several expensive women were surrounding her and comforting her in a fake role model. I sneered, ignored her, and went back to my seat. This battle tonight is pretty. But I know that Su Wan'er will not let it go, she will definitely find a way to fight back. On the other side of Gu Hanting, although he paid a lot of attention to me, he probably still has to put some effort into really flirting with this cold male protagonist. I picked up the incense on the table, shook it lightly, and a smile appeared on the corner of my mouth. Okay, the game has just begun, let's play slowly. A few days after the banquet, the atmosphere in the Lin family garden became unusual. On the surface, everything has returned to peace, the guests have dispersed, and the servants have their own duties, but I know that the wind in the secret has just begun. After Su Wan'er was exposed by me that night, although she no longer came to find fault with her, the resentment hidden in her eyes could be felt even from afar. Mr. Lin's attitude towards me became even colder, and he didn't even want to look at me on the table. It was obviously because he was still worried about my wedding and banquet. I don't care. Anyway, since the first day of wearing a book, I have no hope of changing my fate by practicing well. But here at Su Wan'er, I have to be careful. She is not a fuel-efficient light in the book. She was hit on the face once and would definitely find ways to counterattack. I sat on the windowsill in my room, playing with a pen in my hand, and the speed plate in my brain was counting on what I would like to do next. As expected, within 2 days, the trouble came to the door. That morning, when I got off the floor and prepared for breakfast, I heard the private words of several servants from the living room, such as, Miss Xiaoxiao, sudden, and everything in the circle, that kept flying into my ears. My heart skipped a beat, stopped walking, pretending to be low and playing with my phone, my ears were stretched high. I heard that it was the information that Miss Su revealed, saying that Miss Xiao deliberately framed her at a charity banquet, and that she had misbehaved privately, and had already had unclear relationships with several men. A girl whispered a low voice, her lingering full of gossip. Really, fake? Miss Xiao doesn't look like that kind of person. Another servant muttered in a low voice. No matter whether she looks like her or not, Miss Su threw out all the certificates and heard photos. Now the Haoman circle is blown up, and the Lin family's face is about to be wiped out. The first daughter said in a head, as if she had seen her neighborhood. When I heard this, I couldn't help but thrust the corners of my mouth. Su Wan's trick was really ruthless. She directly labeled me as not checking my private life, and also created the so-called photo certificate, which will ultimately destroy my reputation. I sneered, put away my cell phone, walked into the living room, and coughed deliberately. The two daughters raised their heads to see me, and their faces turned pale in an instant, and they stammered and wanted to explain. I held my hand and was as relaxed as if I was chatting about home. Say, what information did Su Wan'er burst out? Where are the photos? I also want to see how romantic I am. They looked at each other, so scared that they didn't dare to say anything, and lowered their heads to start cleaning the table. I rolled my eyes and asked, so I went upstairs and went back to the room, took out my phone and flipped through several gossip groups in the wealthy circle. Sure enough, the group was already blown up, and the screen was full of black material about me, and there were even a few blurry photos, which looked like they were taken secretly. Although the woman in the photo couldn't see her face clearly, her clothes looked very similar to my usual style. There were several men standing next to her, and the scene was so ambiguous. The comments below are so sour that they can overflow the screen. Some people say that I am worthy of being the wildest lady of the Lin family, and some people directly mocked. It seems that the marriage was broken because there was a new life. There were also a few hypocritical, sad, for the Lin family, saying, old Lin's face is too big. I was so happy to see that Su Wan's technique is really not very good. The photos are just pee, and they can't even match the light. Do you still want to use this thing to mess with me? However, people in the Haoman circle do not care about the truth or falsehood. The more they spread rumors, the more fun they are. Now my reputation is probably already on the street. I squinted my eyes and soon had an idea in my brain. Since Su Wan wanted to play a bad game, I would play a big game with her, so that she could suffer the consequences. That afternoon, I secretly contacted a little sister I met in the circle, named Li Man. This girl has an average family background, but her brain is best at gossip and inquire about news. As soon as she heard that I was asking her for help, she answered without saying anything, and took the initiative to ask me to check the way this photo came. Don't worry, this low-level P picture is outsourced to a small workshop at first sight. I will give me one day to keep it and help you dig out the behind-the-scenes pusher. Li Man patted his chest to ensure that he was full of excitement in his voice. I responded with a smile, and I knew in my heart that this matter was probably caused by Su Wan. The question was how to throw the certificate on her face. That night, Li Man did not disappoint me. She posted a bunch of chat screenshots and records of transfers, proving that the photos were made by Su Wan, and even the several Rhythmic Water Army accounts in the gossip group were arranged by her. I looked at the clips and hummed in my heart, Su Wan'er, how do you whiten it? With these evidences, I directly made appointments with a few more vocal women in the circle, and was ready to shake this out at the next party, which made Su Wan's good fame collapse. But before I could move, Su Wan's moved first. The next morning, Mr. Lin suddenly called me to the book room. His face was as dark as a bottom, and he was holding a photo in his hand, the few photos that were circulated online. He slapped the table suddenly and shouted angrily, Lin Xiaoxiao, look at the good things you did. You have to do anything about the Lin family's face. I glanced at the photo and pretended to be innocent and said, Yuan, this photo is fake at first glance. Don't be fooled by your old eyes. Fake it? People in the whole circle are spreading it, do you still dare to speak stubbornly? Lin Laozi shivered and pointed at my nose. This afternoon, the Su family and several family leaders will come to the garden to discuss your affairs. You'd better give me some old ways and don't lose sight of others again. I feel happy. Are the people from the Su family here? Isn't that exactly Su Wan's self-submission to Ronaldo? I was thinking about it on the surface, and said, I understand, on my lips, and was thinking about how to take this opportunity to counterattack. At the afternoon meeting, I said it was a public trial. Su Wan'er would definitely take advantage of the opportunity to add to the point, but I insisted that she lifted the stone and smashed her feet. The meeting time was soon arrived, and the Lin family's conference room was full of people. Not only were there leaders of the Su family, but also several family representatives who had close ties with the Lin family, and their faces were very serious. Su Wan'er also came, wearing a plain dress with red eyes, as if she was so wronged. When she entered the door, she looked at me with a look of her eyes full of ticks. I didn't see it when I was low-headed and sneered in my heart, "Come on, I'm not afraid of you when acting." After the meeting began, Mr. Lin spoke first and spoke out the rumors and photos on the internet. His words were full of anger. Finally, he patted the table and asked me, "Lin Xiaoxiao, what's going on?" I stood up, with a helpless smile on my face, and my temper was not slow. "Yeah, I know you are angry, but this photo is really not true. Who did it? Who knows it in his heart? And if you don't believe it, you can ask Miss Su, she may know more about her inner feelings than me." As soon as this happened, the whole audience focused on Su Wan's body. Her face changed, and she hurriedly squinted, and said in a choking voice, "Xiaoxiao sister, what do you mean? How did I know these things? I felt so uncomfortable when I heard rumors. I came here to clarify it." "Clarify me?" I raised my eyebrows and smiled a little funny. Miss Su is really good at laughing. "Are these photos and rumors just what you do?" "You nonsense. How could I do this?" Su Wan was anxious, her eyes instantly rolled out, turned to look at old Lin, and said softly, "Yeah, don't listen to Sister Zhao's nonsense, I really didn't do anything." Old Lin's eyebrows were snaking, which seemed a little hesitant. I took the hot wire, took out my phone from my bag, and projected the chat screenshots and transfer records posted by Li Man onto the screen in the meeting room, and said calmly, "Dear bosses, I'm here. Miss Su spends money to find someone to write pictures, and hires water soldiers to bring the rhythm in the group." This is not something I said, but the records are clear. On the screen, the chat content and transfer amounts were obvious at a glance, and Su Wan's name was listed. The whole scene was quiet for a moment, and a low voice of discussion broke out immediately. Su Wan'er's face was as white as paper, and her lips were trembling and she wanted to unravel it, but she couldn't even put a word out. "Su Wan'er, what else do you have to say?" Old Lin opened his voice in a deep voice, his eyes full of disappointment. Several of the Su family's bosses couldn't sit still, and their faces were harder to see. After all, if this matter was spread, the Su family's reputation would have to be done. I really don't know. These must be fake." Su Wan was so anxious that her eyes fell out, but no one bought her account this time, and it was proved that she was in front of her. No matter how many she performed, it would be useless. I felt so happy when I looked at her wolves, but I still looked generous and said, "Miss Su, I am still a good person. I won't pursue it this time, but I will play this next time, don't blame me for being merciless." This was so easy that it was like a knife stabbing into her heart. Su Wan bit her lip and lowered her head and didn't dare to say anything anymore. The head of the Su family quickly stood up and apologized to Mr. Lin, saying, "If you go back, you will be punished seriously." Old Lin snorted coldly. Although he didn't say anything, his eyes were not that cold, and even had a complicated meaning. After the meeting ended, I was about to go back to my room when a low voice suddenly came from behind me, "Miss Lin, stay." I was stunned and turned my head to see that when Gu Hanting appeared at the door, wearing a dark suit, his aura was so strong that people dared not look directly. How could he be here? My heart thumped, I smiled, and asked lightly, "Is there anything wrong with me?" He didn't rush to answer, his eyes swept over me, as if he wanted to see something, and it took a few seconds to speak slowly. "I heard about the meeting just now. You're having a pretty good time with this move." I raised my eyebrows. Unexpectedly, he would take the initiative to express my grin and replied with a smile, "The guard has always won the prize. I'm just protecting myself. Who would have to mess with me?" He tugged the corners of his mouth slightly, as if he was smiling, but the smile flew away and immediately returned to his cold look. it's a good thing to protect yourself, but your incident today has moved the face of the Su family, and they won't be able to rest easily. Be careful. This sounds like a reminder, but there is a kind of inexplicable concern in the language. My heart moved. Can't I think this cold male lead is a little concerned about me? I blinked, deliberately approaching a little, and whispered with a few points, "Are you worried about me?" "Don't worry, I'm so hard-working. If you want to mess with me, let's see who will fall first." Gu Hanting narrowed his eyes slightly, as if he was amused by me, but he quickly stopped and said lightly, "Follow you." After saying that, he turned around and left, his back still as cold as an iceberg. I stared at his back, feeling a little excited. Although he didn't say anything, this attitude was obviously much more harmonious than before, and the code was not the pure and cold look at him. It seems that my backward path has always left some traces in the heart of this male protagonist. Just as he was thinking, the housekeeper Chen suddenly walked over and said in a low voice, "Miss, I'll let you go to the bookstore," saying that I have something to talk about. My heart skipped a beat. Will old Lin look for me? Could it be that the meeting changed his mind? Or, is there any new trouble waiting for me? I took a deep breath, said, "Okay," and walked towards the book room. At the entrance of the book room, Mr. Lin was sitting on the Grandmaster's chair. Her face was still cold, but there was a little bit of anger in her eyes. After I entered the door, he looked up at me and said in a deep voice, "As of course, you have to deal with this matter today." I was stunned for a moment, but unexpectedly he would say to me, so I quickly answered with a smile, "I have won the prize. I don't want the Lin family's famous name to be dragged down, so I have to take action." He hummed and did not answer this, but said, "However, the Su family will not let it go. There is also the Zhang family who will be able to get the marriage matters cleanly, but you have to bear the consequences yourself. Next, there will be several major projects in the Lin family that will start. I plan to let you participate in it and take the exam for you." My heart was shocked. Were you participating in the project? This is the core business of the Lin family. The original owner was not even involved in it. Now, Mr. Lin actually took the initiative to mention this matter. Is it hard to start to recognize my abilities? I felt the excitement in my heart, and on the surface I still responded respectfully, "Thank you for giving me the opportunity, I will definitely not disappoint you." Mr. Lin clicked the head and let me go out. When I walked out of the book room, I felt a little indescribable. Although this wave won Su Wan'er, Gu Hanting and Mr. Lin's attitude towards me changed, I just told me that a bigger challenge was still at the back. When I returned to the room, my phone suddenly fell. I looked down and saw that it was a message from Li Man. After, I heard that Su Wan'er had contacted several families. It seemed that she was secretly engaging in something important, so you have to be careful. I looked at the news and sneered at the corner of my mouth. "Okay, Su Wan'er, it seems that you are not giving up. Then let's continue playing and see if this time, who can laugh to the end." A few days passed, and Su Wan's side did not stop. The news about Li Man was correct. She started to contact several families from all over the world and helped me to give me a big reversal. I sat on the windowsill, holding a cup of hot tea in my hand, and flying in my brain was calculating the solution. At this time, the phone suddenly hit. It was from Chen, who was beside Mr. Lin. His voice was low and urgent, "Miss, I will let you go to the main hall immediately. The Su family has come, and there are also several family leaders who say they want to discuss some things." I raised my eyebrows and sneered in my heart, so it was so fast. Su Wan'er couldn't help it anymore. She wanted to join several big families to put pressure on me. I put down my teacup, changed my neat dress, tidied up my hair at the lens, and smiled at the corner of my mouth. "Okay, come here, who are you afraid of?" When we arrived at the hall, the atmosphere was indeed a strife. Mr. Lin sat in the main seat, his face as dark as the day before the rain. Su Wan'er stood beside the head of the Su family, her eyes were red, as if she had just cried, but there was a smugness in her eyes. Several other families also arrived, with a serious expression, and her eyes always looked at me, as if she had convicted me. Let's sit down. Old Lin spoke coldly, with no temperature in his language. I clicked the head and found a position to sit down. I looked at everyone's expressions on the surface. Su Wan's fight is obviously to use this meeting to step on me. A boss from the Su family spoke first. His voice was low and he felt a sense of pressure. Old Master Lin, we are here today to discuss the things that Miss Xiaoxiao had exposed at the meeting. Although Su Wan had something wrong, Miss Xiaoxiao even brought out the so-called certificate when it was revealed by everyone. Isn't this letting our Su family face to face? This is too much. I hummed in my heart, and it was true. I first put a merciless hat on me, and then I made up my dissatisfaction with me by Mr. Lin. I glanced at Su Wan. She lowered her head and was so sad, but the smile on the corner of her mouth was not hidden. Old Lin looked at me with his eyebrows, and asked in a deep voice, "Still, what do you have to say?" I stood up, with an innocent smile on my face, and my temperament was not too slow. "Yeah, dear elders, the things Miss Su has done before are confirmed. I just took them out to clarify my reputation. Could it be too much? If the Su family thinks it is too much to deal with their children, so that she can do these things that are unfamiliar." As soon as this happened, the faces of several Su family members became dark in an instant. Su Wan even bit her lips tightly, raised her head to look at me, her eyes filled with resentment, but she still felt a little aggrieved. "Sister, I know you don't like me, but you can't wrong me like this. Those evidences. I really don't know what's going on." "Don't know?" I raised my eyebrows, took out a piece of newly printed data from my bag, and threw it directly onto the table. My language became a little cold. "Miss Su, this is the chat record you later contacted the Water Army to continue to create my chat records, and there was also a transfer account order for you to find someone to create more photos. Is these things fake?" The whole scene was silent. Several long heads looked through the data with a low head, and the faces were harder to see. Su Wan was panicked this time, and her voice was trembling. This is not true. "Sister Xiao, how could you frame me like this?" "Framed?" I sneered and turned to Old Man Lin. "I have experienced these things with professionals, and they are definitely not made. Miss Su repeatedly reminds me, but I am just protecting myself." However, the Su family, if they can't manage their own children, are they still embarrassed to come to this thriller to ask for their crimes? This sentence is direct and sharp. Several of the Su family's elders were so speechless that Su Wan's eyes were even more ecstatic, but no one sympathized with her this time. Although Lin Laozi's face was still cold, there was a little more complex in his eyes, as if it had changed my attitude a little. "It's too late." He slapped the table suddenly, his voice low and majestic. "The Su family is indeed one ye is not doing it right. The Lin family is not an ignorant place, but you must behave properly in your work, and don't be too aggressive." I clicked and smiled and said, "I remember it," I said. On the surface, I answered happily, but I knew in my heart that this matter was not over yet. Su Wan'er has a very thick facial skin and probably will find opportunities to fight back. Sure enough, after the meeting ended, Su Wan didn't leave and just slapped me in the corridor, unable to hide the resentment in her eyes. She gritted her teeth and said in a low voice, "Lin Xiao, don't be too proud too early. I won't let it go if I'm going to do this today." I raised my eyebrows and smiled a little unreasonably. "For you, I am the least afraid of being troubled. What tricks do you have? Even if you use them, let's see who can play to the end." Su Wan was so angry that she shook her body, but she couldn't respond a word, so she could only glare at me and turn away. I looked at her back and snorted coldly in my heart. "Okay, this battle has not ended yet, I have to be more careful next." However, what I didn't expect was that the real transfer will arrive soon. A few days later, a major project of the Lin family was officially launched, and Mr. Lin really handed over some of the core affairs to me. This is unprecedented in the Lin family, but the original owner has never been trusted. After I took over, Lima devoted himself to work, relying on the modern business knowledge and drama profits before I walked the book. He forced the project to be smooth. At the same time, Su Wan's silence became smaller and smaller. She heard that her reputation in the circle was already very bad, and even the Su family began to be dissatisfied with her. After all, who didn't want to get tired of the entire family because of her alone? I know that this woman probably had no choice but to settle down. Just as the project entered the key stage, Mr. Lin suddenly called me to the book room, and his face was much more peaceful than before, and he even felt a little relieved. He looked at me and spoke slowly. After all, you did a good job in this period of time, and the project progress was better than I expected. And you handled the matters of the Su family before. I did underestimate you. I was shocked, and I didn't expect that he would take the initiative to admit this. I hurriedly replied, you are so serious. I just don't want to let the Lin family eat, so I'm hard on my skin. He was a little bit, and was silent for a while, and his temperament was a little lower. I was not considerate when I forced you to marry. Although you are stubborn, your mind is not bad. In the future, you should make your own decisions, and the Lin family will not interfere with it. As soon as this came out, a buzzing sound in my brain seemed to have a flower exploded. Did Mr. Lin finally recognize me? I suppressed the excitement in my heart and responded respectfully, thank you. Walking out of the book room, I stood in the corridor, took a deep breath, and the pressure in my heart that had been suppressed for a long time finally dissipated. From the first day I went to school, I was so overwhelmed by this breakup of marriage and family rules, and now I've finally gotten out of my head. Queen of the Lin family? Oh, this number is so stable. However, the emotional line is still the last step. Although the man, Gu Hanting, has improved a lot of attitude towards me recently, I have never made it clear. I bit my lip and decided to take the initiative to attack. It was so far. I can't let me, a girl, wait for him to open my mouth first, right? That night, I had a date for Gu Hanting to meet at the lake near Lin Xiaoxiao Park, on the grounds that, I want to ask for some things on the project. He responded very happily. When the time was set, he appeared at the right time. He was wearing a casual suit and was still so strong, but his eyes were a little gentler than before. Miss Lin, what's the matter? He leaned against the column beside the lake, his voice low, and his eyes fell on me. I felt a little nervous, but I walked over with my head and said with a smile, actually, there is nothing serious about it, I just want to talk to you. I'll remind me these days, otherwise I might have really suffered from the Su family. He raised his eyebrows and a smile that was almost invisible to the corner of his mouth, you are so unbearable. You have many means. It sounds like a joke, but my heart feels warm and I just pointed it out directly, as aware, I am not a person who is lying around, let's just say it. How do you feel to me? As soon as this problem arose, the air seemed to be quiet for a moment. Gu Hanting narrowed his eyes slightly, as if he hadn't expected that I would be so straightforward. He was silent for a few seconds, then he opened his mouth slowly, his voice as low as if it was in his ears, Lin Xiaoxiao, you are such a big man. I felt nervous, thinking he was going to refuse, but the next second, he suddenly took a step forward, so close that I could hear the faint woody fragrance on his body. He looked at me with his head down, his eyes as deep as he could suck people in, and he was teasing a few words in his language, but, I really like your unwilling scoundrel. The sound of my brain, turning, made my face suddenly feel hot. Is this a confession? The cool male protagonist said he liked me. I strongly decorated and replied with a smile, as aware of this, I'm very helpful. Can we try it? He didn't answer directly, but just reached out and gently slapped my shoulders. His movements were natural and domineering, as if he had already planned. My heart beats as fast as a drumbeat, but I still leans against him with my head hard, and I can't help but swelling up the corners of my mouth. Lin Xiao, he called my name in a low voice, with a little gentleness in his language, if I am here in the future, no one can move you. This sentence is like a calming pill, and the anxiety in my heart has finally faded. I looked up at him, smiling freely and suddenly said, "You're mahjong, that's a matter of fact. Let's take this rich circle together." He smiled and said nothing, but just held my hand tightly. The night wind blows over the lake, with a hint of warmth, but my heart is so warm. From the time I went through the book to now, this path of backwardness has come to my head. I have all my love and power in my hand. A few months later, the Lin family's status was successfully upgraded to the next level due to the successful project, and I was officially recognized as one of the core members of the family. Even Mr. Lin looked at me with relief. Su Wan'er had been treated with cold treatment by the Su family for a long time and heard that she had been sent out of the country to restrain and probably couldn't even turn over. My relationship with Gu Hanting has also stabilized. Although he still looks cold, he is getting more and more affectionate to me. Everyone in the circle says that I am the only woman who can keep her guard down. I just smiled when I heard it, and I knew in my heart that all this was something I had fought step by step. One night, Gu Hanting and I sat on the terrace of the garden. The moonlight came down and the atmosphere was just fine. I leaned on his shoulder and asked, as a ruler, when you first saw me tearing up a marriage, did you think I was crazy? He looked down at me, and his lips slightly slighted, well, it's really crazy. But that ruthlessness is quite attractive. I was happy and said, okay, you have vision. He didn't say anything anymore, but just lowered his head and kissed him, gentle and domineering. My heart was sweet, I closed my eyes, and enjoyed the peace of this moment. From the evil female supporting role to the Queen of the Raven, it was amazing all the way, but fortunately, the ending was perfect. There may be challenges in the future, but with him around, I am not afraid of anything. Lin Xiaoxiao's life has been overwhelmed from this moment.